Welcome, everyone. I appreciate your presence here. I'm Leah Hald. I'm the new chair of the Professional Development Committee, along with my amazing co-chair, Kirsten Elliott, who's here. I will be posting the questions in the chat. Let me just say first a couple of words before we get started. It was not this year that we had the idea of doing a VP town hall meeting. It actually came out of the PDC and CPDC meetings in fall of 2019. So it was at our meetings back then that it became clear to us that many people in the SMC community felt the need for greater communication between the people with the power to make decisions and the rest of the college. So in February of 2020, the CPDC and PDC sent out a survey to the entire SMC community to get questions for the VP town hall. But then, as we all know, the pandemic hit and Flex Day 2020 was moved online at the very last minute, and the VP town hall was tabled. We just didn't have time to transfer to what we were going to be doing in that short time. So I personally know a lot of the great work that our VP panel members have been doing. There's a sense that a lot of information and decisions are being made behind the curtain. So we would like to open those curtains and get some light in here. And the CPDC and PDC went back to the data from the survey a year ago, sifted through your responses from the community, and those formed the questions of this town hall. But of course, a lot has happened since February of 2020. So we modified some of the questions and have added a few as well. We will probably not get to all of the questions. Some of the questions we could literally spend the entire time on, but as was just posted in the chat, there will be 4 town halls in the upcoming months to improve communication, especially about how we're going to move back on campus. And we hope this town hall meeting is going to become a tradition for every Flex Day to keep communication open and build a better understanding of the needs of everyone across the campus. So we've already alerted the VPs that are not in this session that they're going to be invited to participate in the town hall for the fall. Let me just say a couple last words. So our theme this spring is We Are SMC, showing authentic care to students and each other. Brian Rodas yesterday said that students won't care unless they know how much we care. I think a similar statement can be applied to everyone at the SMC community, faculty, classified educators, and administrators. Now's the time to show that we care about each other. These town hall discussions aim to improve campus communication and allow the campus community to hear answers from topical questions from leadership. I'm going to close and introduce our VP panel by saying what is actually written on my syllabus in every class that I teach, and I always say on the first day of class. I'm just changing a few words to fit into this forum, which is We Are SMC. It's important to respect your fellow employees, yourself, and me. We are all different people with different ways of thinking, doing things, and behaving. Please make sure that your way of behaving doesn't disrupt others to communicate in this town hall. I have the great privilege and honor to introduce 3 of our VPs today, Michael Tuitasi, Teresita Rodriguez, and Dr. Jennifer Merlic. We are going to be starting with a fun one. This will be the softball question. I'll post all the questions in a minute while they're answering this. I start my Zoom lectures with a check-in where students participate in something about themselves. This is instead of taking like attendance or anything like that. So here's that question. Can you tell us what have you been baking, or if not baking yourself, eating during the pandemic? And we'll make this one short.
Okay. Who wants to start? I'll chime in if you want. Hi, everybody. And thank you, PDC, for setting this time up. I still have my notes, and I even had a PowerPoint for the panel last year that got canceled because of the pandemic. And I hear Leah's comment of people feeling like decisions are made behind a curtain. I think I probably speak for all of us when I say we don't want to be behind a curtain, but we're a large institution. We've lost the ability to run into people on campus and chat before and after meetings and conference rooms and hallways and such. So this is a welcome opportunity. Baking and cooking are biggies for me, and we're pre-pandemic. So I could talk about this for a long time, and I won't. But I'm going to do a little plug for the New York Times. what I did in the pandemic was to switch over to, I joined the New York Times cooking subscription. There's an annual fee. It's not very much. I don't remember what it was, but you can get an annual fee and then you can have a recipe box. And they kind of do bombard your email inbox, but it's with wonderful stuff. They'll give you what to cook on weeknights, what to cook this weekend, great dessert ideas. If there's a holiday coming up, they give you special recipes for that. And I can tell you, for myself, my husband, and my son, my adult sons, we have yet to have a recipe that didn't really thrill us. I mean, they're awesome. So if you're looking for something fun, I especially recommend the lemon bars with olive oil and salt.
I would love to, share some wonderful recipes. I used to love to bake until my daughter was diagnosed with celiac disease, and I still have yet to figure out how to bake gluten-free that doesn't taste like cardboard. So if anyone has some good gluten-free recipes, I would love them.
And I just don't make it all, but I have been making a lot of soups and stews and ramens and a lot of comfort, warm goodness. So if you have those recipes, please share those with me. And Jenny's makes a lot of different types of sweet breads and lemon breads and tangerine breads. And we're always asking for recipes from Jenny.
That's fantastic. So we're going to kick off with I'm going to say a three-pronged question. What is the greatest challenge that college faces to closing equity gaps? How will you redefine the work that you're doing to support reducing equity gaps at the college? And I'm going to stop there, have you talk about that, and then I've got some follow-up around equity, especially returning to campus.
I can start. So I think one of the biggest challenges that we face as an institution is, we are large and complex. We've got so many great things happening across campus, but I feel as if one of the biggest challenges before us, especially with limited resources, everyone is incredibly busy, is really to focus on fewer priorities. We're trying to do a lot of things. Things are popping up that are in some ways duplicative, all great stuff, but we really need a more coordinated effort. But I think one of the things that we're currently faced with is coming back post-pandemic. So we have disproportionately felt the impact amongst our Black and Brown students and our international students that have been hit particularly hard with the effects of the pandemic. So we've lost a lot of enrollment in all of those categories. When I look at the enrollment daily, our AB 540 students have left us in larger numbers than anybody else, rivaling international that are, dealing with visa issues and those kinds of things. So as we were making plans to better engage our Black and Brown students and, put forth many of the equity initiatives, I think we need to go back and rethink how we are going to come back and how we are going to address the effects of the pandemic on this population in particular, how we re-engage them. We have many lessons learned over the course of the last year in terms of some of the challenges that this population is particularly facing that we need to address. And we are going to need to engage our student populations in a different way post-pandemic than even some of the great plans that we were trying to put together prior to. Some of the things that we're working on right now with the Enrollment Management Group is beginning the process of a 5-year strategic enrollment management plan that focuses on equity, the vision for success, maximizing the student-centered funding formula, how we address our local community, and really infusing equity across the board. So that work will be happening throughout the spring term and through the summer with the hopes that we can publish a 5-year plan by the time we're ready to return in fall. And I'll turn it over to someone else.
Jenny, you want to?
Sure, Mike. Okay, I didn't want to speak over you. Thanks, Terry. I can second what Terry said. I think, the fact that we have lost about 6% now of our FTES just compared to last spring, that translates into a lot of students, and it is disproportionately Black and Latinx students that we've lost. So I'm concerned at the moment about bringing those students back, how to reach out, re-engage those students, because the impact of the pandemic won't disappear immediately. So how do we continue to support those who are still with us, and then better support those who left, find out why they left and how we can bring them back. But I don't want to be duplicative with the work, the words that Terry just shared. So I want to talk a little bit about, I think, some of the more institutional processes that we have and the need to reform those in order to be more equity focused. And they may be not the sexiest of the activities that we do, but they are our infrastructure. And I think that we absolutely have to reform them. And we are reforming them. So one example is our planning processes. A couple of years ago, DPAC started really revamping how they do their work. DPAC is the District Planning and Advisory Council. When Teresita was chairing that group, they decided that it was hard to be impactful when the planning was happening too late in the cycle. So they proposed that we have, for 1 year, double the work, do the current year's work and do the next year's work, so that we get a year ahead in our planning. And then I began chairing DPAC during that year, for that year when we did double work. That was last year. Basically, DPAC comes up with institutional annual action plans. And by doing a double set last year, we planned the ones for 2021, for 1920, but also the ones for 2021, so that we could get a year ahead of the game. It's a bit challenging because you're trying to look further down the road and think about what you're going to be doing a year from now. But the benefit is that it allows those plans to be brought into the annual budgeting cycle of the college, so that we can better integrate our budget planning with our equity planning. So the other piece of that is that the action plans are being driven now by our equity goals, our equity efforts. So it's a way of better integrating and aligning what we want to do, what the goals we've set for ourselves in the equity plan and the redesign, with our funding, our district funding, as well as categorical funding, but primarily district funding has to be planned well in advance. So I think that that's a really important change. And then one other thing I want to say is we also have our program review and our accreditation processes that are integrated into the core of the college. Again, not like everybody's favorite or sexiest activity, but I want to remind everybody that both of those activities are, while they are mandates, they are also designed so that there's a lot of flexibility in how we interpret them. So I would say let's work together to make sure that we look at both program review and accreditation with a very focused equity lens. And I think it's a timely reminder, because we'll be starting that accreditation cycle again very soon. This spring, we're going to be identifying this. The Academic Senate leadership is working with administration to come up with, find folks to be the leaders of the steering committee. And then next year, those leaders will be reaching out to all of you to get a campus-wide involvement. So please step forward when that opportunity comes forth, so that we can do the first step of the accreditation cycle, which is a thorough institutional self-evaluation. We want all the voices to be heard in that, and we want it to be, like I said, conducted with an equity lens. You're up to you, Mike.
All right. Yeah, so in the area of student affairs, I mean, there's a lot of equity work going on right now, good work. And so and of course, there's a lot of work that needs to happen as well. But from what I found, or what I've seen, is, and something even Maria Munoz, I want to credit her for pointing out, is she did an inventory of all the work that's happening on campus. And I think coordinating all those efforts so that everyone understands, the work that's happening, but also the direction that we're moving. I think that needs to happen, holistically throughout the college, so that everyone understands what our goals are, what our equity plan is saying, and how we're meeting those goals. So there's confusion in a sense with some, and there's some that are I've been working on projects. Teresita had mentioned some overlap with things. But I think once all of that is coordinated, and Maria's doing a great job as far as moving us forward in that direction, I think we'll have a better idea as far as direction for our equity efforts.
Thank you so much. I want to address the elephant in the room, which has to do with, is also an equity issue, but equity about our employees at SMC. And that has to do with the email that came out about the plan the school has in terms of returning managers and classified to campus. I know a week ago I had to say what my plan was as a faculty, and I had full choice in how I wanted to return online or not. And managers and classified educators are concerned about how equity will apply to them. In particular, like, how are they going to be part of that conversation? And are we going to be doing that while LA is in the red tier? And there's a lot of mistrust and fear and not feeling part of that path or communication. So I'm going to have you address that.
Yeah, I'm probably the best to answer the question in my involvement with emergency operations. So just to kind of give a little bit of the foundation of how we're set up at the college in addressing the pandemic. We have various groups that meet weekly, daily. The emergency operation team leads that spearhead many of the efforts meet daily for the most part. There are meetings with senior staff and EOT membership that meet 3 times a week. The larger EOT meets 2 times a week. There are subgroups that include academic affairs, marketing, the procurement and facilities, as well as human resources that also meet once a week to have discussions about all of these topics. Because it's been such a dynamic pandemic and situation, these meetings have been critical as far as helping us plan as far as what our next steps are. The emergency operations teams, we really take our foundation as far as planning from the county. Once a month, Dr. Ferrer provides updates for institutions of higher education. And so she talks about the guidelines and the numbers and where we're headed. Recently, because we've seen a decrease in the numbers of positive cases, the number of deaths and the number of hospitalizations, in fact, it was just last week, the county moved to the red tier. They were also very clear in that they expect us to be in the orange tier within the summer, by summer. So the emergency operations team gets together and we start to discuss what does that mean for Santa Monica College. Now, we have always been very cautious, and safety has been the priority as far as looking at the activities that we bring back on campus, working with our employees, and when our employees come back on campus. And so, for example, when we've had the increase over the holidays, we scaled back immediately when we saw the rise in COVID-19 cases. However, now is probably the biggest lift as far as how do we bring employees back? How do we prepare our facilities to bring employees back? How do we provide training and put safety measures in place? And so in our discussions, we looked at just that. How do we bring employees back safely? So with managers, looking at bringing managers back, to help provide the supervision for employees, and then also slowly phasing employees back in. And granted, we understand that there are individuals who make that don't allow them to come back, and that they have that opportunity to speak with their manager, to speak with human resources, to discuss those types of issues, whether it be they have childcare or they're the main home care provider, those kinds of things. And so they do have that avenue to talk to human resources about that. But as we move forward also, and looking at the trends on college campuses, the largest outbreak on college campuses have been through students and students socializing. So very cautious as far as the types of activities that we bring students back on campus. When we're talking about phasing employees back, that doesn't include students. Since faculty, the majority of their contact is with students, they weren't part of this group initially. There are some faculty that are coming back just because we have activities that we've had on campus all along, such as working with, such as our nursing program and our respiratory therapy. We're also now bringing back our low impact athletic sports in preparation for those teams that may be starting up later in fall as well. So all of this planning really is based on recommendations that come from the county, but also looking at ways that we can be nimble as far as bringing people back. And I want to emphasize that more because it's very dynamic and fluid. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen over spring break, what the outbreak would look like if there is one, and we may need to scale back. But as far as the planning, it's very challenging, but it's also very dynamic. So I do ask that, that everyone, we want to hear your concerns. Definitely share your concerns because they are valid and very real and important to us. But it's, I just want to emphasize that we're kind of shooting at a moving target, to use a poor phrase.
And I just want to add to that, we recognize that this is a stressful time. It's been a stressful year. It was stressful when we had to move to remote on a dime. We pivoted on a dime, and we have had to make adjustments all along the way. This is a slow, planned, gradual return. Human Resources and Legal Counsel are planning on attending the next CSEA town hall to address CSEA's questions and to collect more information. We are working with employees collectively and individually, and Human Resources will make themselves available for individuals that have other circumstances. But the plan, as Mike was sharing, is to bring back the management team first, and then really start easing in, our classified professionals in a slow, deliberate way. The pivot back to, I shouldn't even say back, because I don't feel like we're going back. It's not a light switch that we're just turning it back on to everything that we used to have. Things will look differently, but it's going to take all of us collectively to figure out what that looks like. And we need everyone to work together and to help us design what the college is going to look like moving forward. So I think that, I know it feels very abrupt and very sudden, and the communication needs to improve. I'm the first one to say that right now. But the intent is that we work through this together.
I'd love to ask the instructional side as well. Echo. One of the challenges that the whole college faces as an educational institution is driven by the instructional side of the house, and that is that enrollment for students for summer and fall classes is scheduled to begin in just a couple of weeks. And that's always the case. We're always in academic affairs and in all the instructional departments planning our schedules at least 6 months out so that we can make those enrollment deadlines. Students can't enroll if there's not a schedule of classes, and the schedule of classes development thereof is a lengthy and highly detailed process. So we're well underway with that. It'll be done and it'll be posted. It's supposed to be posted publicly by the end of March. So we're really down to the final days of preparing that schedule. Anyway, my point is that we have to publish a schedule now for classes that won't begin for another 5 months or more. We don't know what it's going to look like then. As Mike reported, we just moved into red tier and they're anticipating moving to orange tier very quickly. They're inventing, and then after that would be yellow, and they're now reinventing a green tier, and they think we may well be in the green tier by fall. But we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know about that either. So what we decided would be most practical on the instructional side is, since we cannot have students enroll in an online class and then a couple months later say, you know what, we've changed our minds, we're going to have that be in person because health conditions are permitting that. That's not possible because the student who enrolled could be in another country, in another state. They could have childcare or other dependent care issues. They could have employment issues. They enrolled on the assumption that it would be online. So it's for our students that we really can't pivot from online to in person. However, we all proved, we didn't like it, but we proved that we can pivot from in person to online when we did it for the entire college 3 days, in 3 days last spring. So what we're doing now is reaching out to all of the department chairs and they to their faculty to say which classes, small percentage. We don't want to bring back all faculty because bringing back all faculty means bringing back all students. And we cannot just flip that light switch, as Teresita said. We have to do this gradually. So we want only a very small percentage of classes returning in the fall with a safety net that if health conditions don't progress the way a lot of experts are currently anticipating, we can switch those back to online as needed and keep everybody safe. So in preparation to do that, we are asking, where could we start bringing some classes back? And that does allow some choice for faculty. And I am sensitive to the fact that that's not equitable, where management and all classified staff don't have the same choice. It is by nature of the type of work that's being done and the fact that we can't bring back all the faculty, that difference does exist. And we're not insensitive to that. It's just very difficult to find a way to plan around that. We can't force all faculty and all students to come back for equity and then put everyone in danger by having the entire campus community back overnight. We have to phase this in.
And to give an overview of, because I know people are saying that there's a survey that was sent out to individuals. There is a president's task force that will be convening to look at results from the survey for moving forward. So what will the college look like in the future post COVID-19? Because we will look very different. And so part of the gathering of the information was not so much focused on fall, but really focused on the college moving forward as a whole. And so getting that feedback is very important. Also in discussions with any of the major changes that have been made, and in the discussions have always included all of the constituent groups, including students, as far as bringing them in and getting, hearing their concerns and opinions. So moving forward, definitely communication can be a lot better, but I think it's also looking at ways that I'm hearing now, as far as some folks are saying, is that how do we bring in more of the concerns of classified staff? So that's that's resonating really high with me right now.
I'm not sure if you're able to answer this, but I wanted to follow up with, do you know, would this, starting out with the managers, is this going to be while LA is in the red tier, or are we going to be waiting more till it's in the orange tier? And of course, nobody can look into a crystal ball and say that when that's going to happen, but do you have an indication for how that's going to work with the tier system?
It will start as early as next month, I believe, with managers coming back. I know we do have a meeting after this discussion to discuss that more as far as the plan in bringing folks back. So, but as far as looking at what we're looking at planning is for managers to come back as soon as next month. Whether that's 1 day or 2 days, I think we're still determining that. But that is part of the discussion. Also, sister institutions. I mean, I've been also talking to others at different, I know LACCD, they're requiring managers to come back 5 days a week, and others maybe have managers come back 2 days a week. So it's a trend that we're going to start seeing over the system. But once again, I do want to emphasize that we are being very cautious, and we have been from the beginning. And our goal is not to bring back folks if it's not safe.
And so if someone has not been able to get a vaccine and they don't personally feel safe coming back, what is their channel of, who should they go to at that point?
I think also talking to their manager would be helpful, but then also HR and managers, we'll be having open dialogues with HR as far as individuals who don't feel comfortable or feel safe. What will it take, or what do they need to feel safe, and to have those types of discussions. But the college has done a great deal as far as looking at providing, cleaning caddies. Dr. Jeffrey talked about it yesterday, looking at signage. Every program that comes back has to have a safety plan. No student should be on campus unless they're in one of those essential personnel classes or they've made an appointment. And there have been individuals on campus who've been working, since we've gone remote. such as 2714, campus police. And so learning from those areas as well that, what they've been doing, but it takes all of us to be safe, and it takes each individual to make sure that you're safe. And then letting us know some of the things that, why you don't feel safe so that we can address those.
Great, thank you. I know we have a set of questions, but of course the COVID is weighing heavy on everybody's mind right now. So I'm going to follow up with one small question from Hannah Lawler. Are we able to bring our kids to campus if you're a manager and they are still in virtual school?
I can, I wanted to add something related to that anyway. I think for people who have childcare issues, for people who have health conditions, et cetera, there is an accommodations process through Lou Gina Rogers' office in HR. And there's already a lot of folks having individual conversations about that. And Lou Gina has a tremendous amount of expertise on what can be done, what kind of documentation is needed, all of the details of how to at least have that conversation and see what accommodations might be possible for individuals. There's a lot of sort of case-by-case discussion that has to happen because people do have unique situations. But childcare is a biggie for a lot of people, obviously, as are health conditions, pre-existing conditions, living with someone who's high risk, any of those cases. So I think that's part of what's going to be addressed at the first town hall on April 5th, I believe is the date. Yeah, April 5th. But I know people are anxious, and I know HR is happy to have those conversations with individuals now too.
Okay. Sorry, there's so many questions coming in right now. It's hard for me to keep on top of them.
I see one on services in the cafeteria. So we'll have the only students that will be on campus will be those in those select courses that I talked about. So for the most part, we will not have the cafeteria food services open. Things like the library, because we can provide those resources to students remotely. Those are, in my opinion, those will be the last things that open. Because once again, we're bringing students into a space that they're gathering. And so we're very cautious of that. We also, with athletics, and I do want to, recognize all the work that they've done. They are testing students weekly, as far as within the athletics department. Within the nursing program, they have their protocols as far as safety. So those types of things we can control as far as students being safe. But once we start to open up the opportunity for social gatherings is where we run the most risk of spreading the virus.
Thank you. I think what I'm going to do is go to the next question that was on the original set of questions, because then as you're having that discussion, I can go through and see if I can bring in these others in. It's just the timing of this session has, in terms of the message out to the college, has made it difficult because there's a lot on everybody's minds right now. So I'm going to be sifting through and bringing those questions up, but I also want to get to some of the questions that that were originally posed. Why don't I skip to number 4, because I think this is really around the same general topic, is how can we improve channels of communication across the college?
I think that that's an ongoing issue, quite frankly. We send out a lot of communications, primarily via email. Not everyone reads them. Some say it's too frequent, some say it's not frequent enough. So really finding that sweet spot and the methods of communication that would resonate with the majority of the community, I think we'd all be interested in what that looks like. And given the size of our organization, we tend to solicit feedback a lot in terms of, surveys and those kinds of things. And then it doesn't necessarily always get shared out, so people don't know what's happening. So I think those are areas that we can definitely improve in terms of making the communication more a two-way communication. But I'd be interested to know if there are other modes of communication that would resonate with a wider audience, because it seems that we are attempting to put out a lot of communication via email, and we're hearing a lot of gaps in terms of what people are understanding that's happening, despite some of the communications that have gone out. And so, you know, whether they're too long, there's too much, too little. I mean, I'd be interested in hearing more from others about ways they would prefer to receive communications.
I agree, Tim. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I want to talk about DPAC again. So again, DPAC is District Planning and Advisory Council, and the membership is well defined in the DPAC charter. We have representatives from CSEA, we have representatives from the faculty, we have representatives from students and from administration. And one thing that we do is after each DPAC, so by the way, DPAC meets every other Wednesday, 3 to 5. I want to tell you it's in the loft, but it's not, it's on Zoom. But anyway, it's an open meeting. You can always sit in if you want to, and the agendas are always sent out to the community. It's one of the modes of communication that Teresita is referring to. Sometimes I think maybe we have a combination of not communicating enough and communicating too much. You know, the bulletins that come out and such sometimes just get deleted. But one of the things that does come out is the DPAC agenda. And if you're interested, I would encourage you to take a look at that. But right now I really want to give a shout out to Cindy Ordaz. We were in our Council of Presidents meeting. This is what we call the little group that stays on after each DPAC meeting to plan the next and upcoming agendas for DPAC. And so it's the president of of Associated Students, president of CSEA, president of the Faculty Association, president of the Senate, president of Management Association. And together we put those agendas out. We had maybe 3 months ago or so, a lengthy conversation about communication. How can we better communicate? Because that's a #1 goal that DPAC has identified. How do we become more widely accessible to people on the campus? And how do we communicate out, you know, what we're doing with the input that we get from them? So Cindy had the idea that we make some DPAC videos. And at first we were kind of like, oh, kind of chuckling at the thought of ourselves making videos. But then we got a team together with Kirsten and Grace and some others who have some more expertise than some of us. And that just started. So in January, you got your first video link. It's What is DPAC? And I noticed that someone put it in the chat, although I'm not sure that all of the attendees can see the chat. So maybe we could send that out again. It's a short little video that says what DPAC does. There's a second one scheduled to come out. We said, I think in April, the next one is coming out. We've got the text already for that. And I think our Senate President, Nate Donahue, has agreed to do the voiceover. And that kind of summarizes the most deeply. I just want to say that DEEP is a way for you to have everyone is part of one of the constituency groups that I just mentioned, and you can go to that constituency group leadership and you can share your concerns and they can bring them to DPAC so that those concerns get addressed in our annual planning cycle.
Great, thank you. So I've got 3 modes of questions coming in right now. And given the concerns of everybody in the room at the moment, I want to ask a few questions around the managers. And the questions are really about, I had it really clear in my head. So the first, the next town hall meeting is actually after they come back. So they have, what would be the best advice for them getting answers around their concerns and questions about the process of coming back for these managers and getting information about that?
This will all be addressed at the next Management Association meeting next week.
Excellent, thank you. I expected a longer answer where I composed my thoughts again because I had it really clear in my head, and then I was like, oh my gosh, it's overload. Let me ask some questions about uh, vaccines and testing. Is there going to be any testing on campus? I don't know if you know the answers to this. So it's really, is there any information you can give us about student testing, employee testing, anything around that?
Well, we still have the county testing site over at our airport campus. And you would need to go through the county to make those appointments. As far as vaccinations, we've gone back and forth with discussions as far as vaccination sites. At this point, we are not, at least the last discussions I've heard, there will not be a vaccination site on campus. But once again, that could change as well. So it's, but at this point, no.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of questions about that. What would you say to classified staff who feel that the district has prioritized faculty over them?
I would say, well, that's not necessarily true. I think it's going back to the nature of individuals' jobs and going back to, the largest group of people that will be coming back on campus are students. Since they're not coming back and working with faculty, we're not going to be offering on-ground services or classes for the most part. I think right now, though, as far as providing classified staff and managers the opportunity to work on campus from their offices is the direction we're heading. So using the phased-in approach as far as looking at bringing folks back, this is the approach that we've started. And there are faculty that will be on campus. I don't want it to seem like there won't be, because there have been faculty teaching, there will be coaches on ground, but we still have to monitor all of that. And also with classified staff, like I said, who feel that they may have issues that hinder them from coming back. We want to hear those issues, and we want them to be forthcoming with their managers and with human resources on those issues. So eventually we will all come back.
So I want to, because you said a minute ago about like students are actually not being asked to come back at this time, other than there's those exceptions there. So
Correct.
for example, those classified that are working in the student services building, is the intention that they're mainly going to be, they're doing some of their work from that building, but actually their interaction with students is going to be remote still?
At this time, correct.
Okay. And I'll just ask that one because that's an easy one to ask. Will masks be required since not all people will be vaccinated?
Correct.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm gonna pivot to a broader question than we originally had, and then because then it gives me a moment to think about these other questions that came in. All right, I'm going to go to number 5. So what will senior leadership do differently to demonstrate care and the value of classified educators as they navigate shifting workflows and expanding commitments?
I think we've largely addressed, the fact that we will work with individuals in their individual circumstances. For most of us, our, the management team is starting to meet with their teams, just like I did when we shifted to remote. Is I joined many of those staff meetings so that, in individual departments, so that I could address questions, and my plan is to do the same. This literally came out a day or two ago. So, the road show is before us.
I think I can add a little bit about the planning process that might help as well. So for example, this morning we had one of our regular department chairs meetings, and we had our chief of police and captain. We had Daniel Phillips, who's our risk manager and safety expert, and we had Devin Starnes, who is a leader in our M&O departments, to answer some questions. And it was a really good discussion. And part of what we were able to communicate out is that safety plans have been developed for those who are already working on campus. And if you, samples of those would show you an incredible level of detail. One-way traffic flows, screenings, health screenings, what the PPE is, what the distancing is, wiping down of surfaces, all of those kinds of things. And then there's also things that our M&O department has done that we don't have to do, but that are also in place in terms of increasing the number of times per minute or whatever the measure is. It's not my area, sorry, of air being replaced in the buildings. That has been increased to the maximum, and the filtration systems have been changed to the highest level possible. There's been some questions and concerns just around general cleanliness of the buildings, because there have been a lot of them not used much for the past year. So you think about water sitting stagnant in pipes and such. M&O has been coming in. They have been flushing toilets, running faucets, all of those kinds of things, because they're very aware of that issue. So there's a lot of information like that. And we have been talking at senior staff about getting that organized into a FAQ so that you guys can hear directly from those M&O experts on all of these safety measures that are being put in place. I think that helps. But also back to the safety plans, to use instruction, because that's the one I know about best, of course, right? We start with what is a generic safety plan for a classroom. So let's say we are able to have some in-person lecture-based classes in the fall semester. That safety plan will have to evolve depending on what tier we're in. If we're not like in a green tier, it won't happen. We'll just pivot back to online. But if we are, there's probably going to be face masks. There's probably going to be 3 foot, maybe 6 foot distancing. We'll have to wait and see what those are, but that will all be spelled out in those safety plans. Once we have that one that's sort of a generic for a standard classroom, we have to then modify that many, many, many times, because we have so many facilities that are unique. So what does that plan, how does that plan look different if you're in a ballet studio or an art studio, or you're in the photography darkroom, or you're in a science lab? So there's lots and lots and lots of individual conversations to happen. And those conversations happen with the individuals who are going to be involved, be they managers, faculty, or classified staff. So we're going to be busy. There's a lot of this planning to do. And I think we're all kind of realizing that the pivot, as hard as the pivot to online was, the pivot back is going to be even more challenging. So we're going to have to pitch in together, make those safety plans, and listen to each other and respect each other's concerns in the process.
Thank you for that. I think there are two things that keep coming up often, and one of them, I'll throw them both out there. One of them is about the feeling that this plan was released before there was, before enough feedback had come in from, let's say, the classified and the managers. And then a related thing is, if we're not having students come back, then in a sense, what's our rush to have the managers and the classified come back?
Once again, it's planning and looking at a phased approach. To bring everybody back at once would just be cruel, in my opinion, to just say everybody's coming back every day and it's the same. So it really is looking at that transition and the transitional time. I think that at least the staff that I've worked with here on campus feel a lot more comfortable that there's not a lot of students coming in, or there's not a lot of contact with other individuals coming in and out. And so it's getting people to a level of comfort by being back on campus. And then we start to phase in other components to providing resources and courses on campus.
And it will allow us to look at things like, traffic flow and, where, how we do business, and plan for when the students do come back and what is that going to look like. But it really is a phased approach. As Mike said, we don't want the students and the staff all coming back for the first time all at the same time. That seems like, a recipe for a bit of chaos, and it's a less safe approach than this phased in approach that we are trying to implement.
Yes, and we will provide masks. I saw that come in. We do have SMC masks that we provide for staff when they return. So yes. cleaning supplies, looking at, plexiglass, all of that. I do want to thank EOT leads, Chief Adams and Captain Carter and Daniel Phillips and Devin Starnes. I mean, they've been working nonstop to ensure that things are safe on campus, as well as preparing for bringing folks back on campus. And so them and their teams has just done a great job. And Susan Fila, excuse me. Even though she's on maternity leave, Susan Fila as well.
So, I mean, the responses coming through anonymously and otherwise are on fire right now. And I think the main issue is that people are concerned now, and there's a lot of pushback on this plan. And I'm wondering whether there can be any revisions made to this plan based on the feedback. And what if there was a survey that went out to managers and classified, which showed actually something like 80, I'm making this up. Imagine that 85% of them said they're not ready yet. They're not ready until the orange tier has been reached, or until it's clear that the orange tier, and we might be there next month. There was an LA Times article yesterday that said we might be there, but we don't know what spring break is going to look like. So I guess, could you say something about the concern that people have now that they just feel blindsided by this plan, that they don't feel like they own that plan?
I think, the plans aren't etched in stone. So definitely the feedback that we're receiving will strongly be taken into consideration. And we will discuss it, with senior staff and at the EOT, with the EOT leads. So as far as like I said, we're willing to be nimble as well, as far as looking at things, as far as the planning. So yes, I would say that there is flexibility there as far as the way that we roll out the plan and discuss the plan again and make revisions to the plan.
I'd like to add too, the points that I was making earlier were intended to explain somewhat about the timeline. So the fact that we will be enrolling students in just a couple of weeks, we're very cognizant of the fact that we can't have any in-person classes without the support of the entire team. We don't need every faculty member back, but we do need to have support from classified educators, from managers. We can't have faculty and students on campus with no one else. And we have to publish that schedule in a couple of weeks. So we're locked into, let's put out our best guess right now, but again, have the safety net that if it's not safe, we can pivot back at any moment to online.
Okay, I'm looking at our time. We have a minute, and there's 50 odd questions coming in, which we obviously don't have time for. Is there something that you could say to close today to give people hope that their concerns, like what they should do with their concerns? And I know we've talked about like reaching out to HR, but that their concerns will be heard, and that you just said there's that you can pivot. It's not set in stone. Could you comment maybe a little more on that? And then I'm also going to add a thank you to doing this on the fly, because this is not what you signed up for. And I really think that you're taking these questions as I'm throwing them out to you.
I think Mike can probably respond to this more, but the one thing that I would like to say is, thank you for everyone who posted questions. The ones that aren't answered today will be responded to either in a town hall, in the meeting with CSEA, in future communications, but we will respond to your concerns. And that if an individual has something personal to them, not about the whole planning process, but about their ability to return, that speaking with their manager and or HR is where to start, and to begin that conversation. HR will really be the one that is going to work through and decide on accommodations, but they can start with the comment with their manager.
Jenny, did you want to go?
I don't have more to add. I do want to just express again that I understand people are worried. This isn't, to state the obvious, this is an unprecedented situation for our entire world, and it is scary. We have to go with what the science looks like right now. But even, from a scientist, I'm a scientist by training, from that perspective, if you try to sort of distance yourself from the personal impacts and the emotional and the suffering that this has caused and just look at it, we're kind of watching science happen in real time. Science doesn't happen overnight. Data are coming in and coming in and coming in. We're doing the best we can as a society with those data. Right now, it looks like most of society, at least in the United States, will be wide open in the fall. If we try to wait until that happens to begin planning, we can't open up and accommodate our students for another 6 months after that. So again, just back to the timeline, we have to be optimistic, plan accordingly, but know that we will pivot back before putting anyone's safety in jeopardy. And then finally, I want to thank everybody for this opportunity. I know it's not the set of questions we were prepared for, but I think all of us love this college community, and want to be able to answer as many questions as quickly as possible. So I appreciate you pivoting the agenda a bit there, Leah, and bringing some of this to us and providing this opportunity.
Great.
Yeah. And I echo that
Thanks.
as well. I want to thank you, Leah, Cyrus, and also Kirsten for pulling this together. This has been a long time in the planning, and hopefully the first of many town hall conversations to have. So I guess in my closing words, I do want to just emphasize that safety is, we are constantly thinking about how to keep our community safe, our employees and our students. And so, as you've heard over and over again, this is new for us. And so we are trying to base it on the science and base it on the information that we have as far as the decisions that we're making. So I thank people for continuing to express their concerns and giving us your feedback because we do take it into consideration. So thank you.
All right, I'm going to thank everybody. I've got many questions that have not been raised. I'm going to be sending all of the questions to all of the VPs, not just the ones at this panel. And I can't thank you enough for all of your questions, your honesty, and the professional nature that this has gone down this afternoon, and especially for taking all the hard questions that came in today. I thank the VP, and I'm looking forward to more of these sessions. Regular sessions that we can have a better understanding of each other's concerns.
Thank you.
One.
Thanks, everybody. Be well.